we are on to our last talk before lunch. And this one is a little bit different from the other ones because it's being held by Galina, Esther, Shubina, and Sahar, Asadi, who are both the WiDS organizers. So they're part of organizing this event, but they're now also speakers. And their talk kind of starts from the fact that we're in a field that's constantly changing. You might have noticed that the name of our organization has switched from Women in Data Science to Women in Data Science, AI and ML, because we're trying to kind of keep up. I think that's a good sort of illustrative example, but there's so much changing about this field and sort of what does it include, what's in it, what's the situation in Sweden, what companies are around, what research is being done, et cetera, et cetera. So Galina and Sahar are going to try to walk us through this and kind of explain to us the state of AI in 2021 and talk about the Swedish ecosystem and our place in it. So over to you, Sahar and Galina.
Thank you very much. Sahar will project the slides. So as we're doing the talk together, we are hoping we can manage this. Sahar?
Just 1 second.
In the meantime, I can start. I can say that Rebecca had a very good introduction around it. Our organization existed now for 4 years, and there were some sporadic things happening in the Swedish ecosystem around AI and data science 4 years ago. But now there are many more things happening, and we realize that our audience of data science practitioners, I think it's useful for all of you guys to understand a little bit better who the different players are and what they do and what people are talking about. So this is going to be a super fast tour through different players in Sweden who are concerned about AI in a variety of ways. We will not, it is our view on this. We're probably not the best people to do this presentation, but we also, we're looking at something that would be interesting to ourselves in this case. Next slide. So, so Women in Data Science Sweden, and I think we can skip to the next one also. So I think it's one of the important things to understand is that, at this point, it's very clear that AI will really change our society in a variety of ways. And I think there's more work trying to figure out, how this is going to happen. And I've been doing a lot of work lately together with innovation managers. And one thing that became clear is that between data practitioners or machine learning and data science practitioners and other groups of people engaged in this, people talk about AI adoption and AI development, and I think we don't have general agreement about what these are. So we tend to talk in our community a lot about just developing the machine learning tools and data science tools, whereas when people say AI adoption, we think more about that. But really when people say AI adoption, what they mean is integrating AI into the processes, how people work with this, how they apply it. There is a lot of concern by groups of people who use AI that their jobs will be replaced. And I think we tend to be kind of technology optimists as developers. And it's very clear that a lot of work needs to be done in order to really have proper AI adoption of the tools that we develop. So one of the things that is happening in Sweden is work, it's a recent thing that happened, is work on AI agenda of Sweden. So it's became very clear that the countries which are successful with AI adoption and AI development, they have formulated national goals around this type of stuff. I just realized I'm probably skipping around some slides, but yes, I didn't bring. Let me do this one and we'll go back for a second. Apologies. So so it's very clear that countries that kind of like think about it and plan for it, they're the ones that are really successful with this type of stuff. And the AI agenda for Sweden is a collaborative work between research, education, and bigger businesses and various public authorities. And so they came up with a list basically of what is important in terms of for Sweden specifically to become a leader in making our society use AI responsibly and also develop AI. And it's a variety of things between kind of working more through ethical perspective. And it is very clear that it is very important for there to be more collaboration, which is again why the conversation around the ecosystem is important. And it's very important to have more research, and it's very important to have data to be more open so people can innovate on top of it and build machine learning on top of it. And also education is very important. And when we say education, Sahar will talk about it, but we don't just mean, education, more technical education for people like us. So we had one slide where we're going to give you a quick roadmap of what we're going to talk through, but I think we should just get onto it. So,
Okay.
So let's talk about the education in
yeah.
there's initiative.
So as Galina mentioned, there's like a big initiative in Sweden about the AI agenda of Sweden, and part of that is related to education. When I was preparing this slide, I started looking at the university admission website. This is where it's a central system in Sweden, where you can apply for bachelor, master programs. And I started searching for master programs, and I searched for the word computer, and I found out there are 197 of them, roughly, if I remember the number correctly, in university admission for master programs. And not just in the name, but also in the description and the tracks that they have. And within those, there are about 25 of them, 25 distinctive names. So, I mean, there are multiple of them that they say, like, for instance, artificial intelligence. There are 25 different names and variations just within the domain of AI. And here's a list of them that you can see. And what we see is that there are a lot of new trends emerging that are related to the advancements that are happening in this field. For instance, AI engineers as being a program. And there are also things that are emerging because of the applications of AI and multidisciplinary work. As an example of them, there are health informatics as one example, or having sorry, there was one interesting case that I wanted to show. It was, for instance, computational social science, and also more related to industrial analytics as an example. So with all of these new names and trends, that means that like a lot of people that coming from out of university, their experiences and their education, which is becoming more applied, is very different from like the education of people who have gone through similar programs of computer engineering a few years ago. And that requires some continuous education while you're at your profession, and also being able to have self-paced, flexible educations. And with that, there are a few initiatives that started in Sweden. And one of the main one is AI Competence for Sweden. It started in 2018. There was a pilot that finished last year, and now it's publicly available. There are many universities there where they are offering single courses, technical courses in this domain, but also of course, like, there are a lot of also internationally available online resources, for instance, in Coursera or Udemy. And we believe that the AI education is not only for technologists and practitioners, but also for executives. And basically, AI education should be available for everyone. And this is a good initiative that is happening in Sweden to support this purpose. With that, I want to go to talking about universities and educations. Universities are also, like, doing a lot of research, and one of the important things in the items of AI agenda of Sweden is to building up basic research in Sweden. And this is important for AI ecosystem if it wants to be among the leaders in the world. And a lot of the fundings in Sweden are focused, research funding in Sweden are focused, related and tied to industrial applications. And there is a lot of applied research happens in the university. Why does this matter for you? In case you want to go for a collaboration with one of these universities, partnering up from the industrial side, or if you want to go for higher educations, these are like, different areas and universities, as well as some research centers outside university that we can highlight. And area-wise, we have different clusters of areas that are explored more in Sweden. Human-computer interaction, natural language processing picking up more and more now, life sciences, automotive, robotics, computer vision and image recognition, and real-time distributed processing. And talking about research, basic research, and also like bringing, tying back industry and research together, there's one famous funding around AI that you might have heard about, is WASP. And this funding is a massive infusion of money to ensuring that AI Sweden can become an AI leader in the world. And this is initiated back in 2015 by Wallenberg family, which is one of the wealthiest families in Sweden, and with a lot of investments and involvement in Swedish industry. And they just want to make sure that the industry of Sweden doesn't fall behind because of not adopting the AI, and also not having the AI development and readiness. And with that, they started funding a lot of researchers and bringing a lot of senior faculties to Sweden, funding a lot of PhD programs, and also establishing a lot of research groups. So in this light, there are 4 areas that it's focused on: mathematical foundations of AI, machine learning and explainable AI, autonomous systems, and softwares related to AI. There's also an area that is very active. You might have heard Virginia's name in this domain, contributing a lot also in European legislations around AI trustworthy. And that initiative is called WASP-HS, or Human Society WASP. There are also a few research arenas that are defined, and these arenas are meant for bringing researchers from industry and from university together to work together. An example of that is Media Vara that was just launched last week, and for example, King being part of that, and this is funded by Vara plus, by WASP, and plus in-kind contributions from companies that they are involved. And with that, over to you, Galina.
Thank you. And I think one of the things is that, of course, some of the bigger well-known companies are, there are some Wallenberg companies among the bigger well-known companies, but there's a lot of big old-time industry in Sweden, and basically every single company will need to integrate AI into how they work, and also probably be transformed in many ways by it. So these are some numbers from 2018. So about 78% at the time were saying that they're piloting embedding AI into at least one function. Note that this might mean that they were embedding it in human resources, for example, as opposed to one of the core function. And about 30% claim that they embedded at least, one technology across their business. Not sure what technology means in this case. But it's very clear that, come to me at least, and I work a lot with AI strategy for the companies, that there is a lot more actually happening in companies. People are really starting to look into what machine learning and AI can do for them. People are a lot less naive about it. And, there are a couple of companies in Sweden, I would say, that really kind of operationalized AI inside at least the basic use cases, and now are trying to figure out what does it mean to be kind of more transformative with this. The other thing I'm happy to say that I'm seeing, and is even though it's still a struggle, but now it's actually recognized that it's a problem, is bigger companies especially, they're really trying to figure out how to make their data more available, how to make it easier to use, how to make it cleaner, how to make sure that data is not siloed. So I think it's fair enough to say that it used to be a problem that companies would get really excited about AI and hire people like you guys to do something about it and expect fairly quick results, and then realize that it's 12 to 18 months to just, you know, dig up the data and do a lot of data engineering and, you know, figure out which data is not collected and what can be done about it. So that's pretty exciting. How is this relevant to you? Well, apparently the top barriers for AI adoption, people think, are talent and AI strategy and technological infrastructure. And that rings right. And AI talent is, of course, many of you guys. And AI strategy is management, understanding better and really trying to integrate everything. And technological infrastructure is some of the stuff that we've heard today. So what actually exists in terms of bigger companies in Sweden? And so I dug up the slides. This is from a Vinnova report in 2018. I think the biggest groups of companies here are telecom, and companies like Ericsson, of course, which has over 100,000 people across the world. Automotive and transport with companies like Volvo. Mining is actually a really big industry in Sweden. I think that's something not that many people like us are aware of. So that's Boliden and Alcab and the rest of the stuff. There's a big fintech industry. We, of course, have a couple of well-known fintech giants like Klarna and Izettle here too. Life sciences are big here, and also, of course, Wallenberg. A lot of Wallenberg funding goes to life sciences, media, entertainment, and retail. And I would say there are interesting things happening in all of those companies. One thing I would say to you is that if you are considering joining one of these companies, I think there are many more interesting projects happening inside them right now. It is good to make sure that whichever company you join, you can have mentorship. And when you join, you can ask interesting questions about how easy it is to get access to interesting data to work with and stuff like this. And also about whether it's integrated with a strategy. And you will probably notice that some of the companies here are actually much smaller than the big companies I just described. And Sahar is going to talk about those.
Yeah, thank you. So another track that we have in Sweden that is, and because of development of AI and infrastructure is also has become more and more popular in Sweden, is the scenery of startups. And why is that important? I think one of the things is that having this trend of increase in interest in AI startups also leads to there's having a high demand for data scientists. Very often also it's important to consider when you're choosing a job in AI startups to know whether, like, at what stage this startup is, and are they looking for someone who is crunching data for them, or is it someone who is actually developing their pipelines? And how does your first year or first months look like in this company? So in the light of that, and to explore that, there has been a study and a work done to build an AI startup landscape. This is is inspired and picked up by the work that has been done for AI startup landscape in Germany, and there's also one that is happening for France. And this is conducted by AI Sweden Institute. We will talk about this organization a bit later, Ignite, and also Research Institute of RISE. And you can see that there are like different varieties of startups, and it's good to keep an eye on them if you are interested in these tracks. And I also wanted to highlight that this is also there are like fewer platforms related compared to, for instance, US startups, and I think many of the startups also adjusting to the domains that we have and the needs we have in Sweden at this stage in time. Over to you.
So, and if you have startups, you have to have investment in startups also. So I had an interesting chat with Rebecca Lottman-Rideau, who is at Industrifonden. And so she said basically, and this is from her thesis on investment, that so in the last few years, artificial intelligence has turned into a hype and been plastered onto every pitch deck remotely related to AI, almost turning into a laughingstock in the VC community. And it's interesting, we were discussing, because as technologists, we felt sometime this way about some of the startups 3 or 4 years ago that we saw. And I think the opinions converged, and it's great to see that data science and AI and machine learning as technologies are taken more seriously, and people understand them better these days. And so it seems like there's a lot more investment in AI right now. People in the Nordics, at least, seem to be more focused on vertical areas, so looking more at specific solutions to problems as opposed to platforms. So platforms, I would say, are rare here, and they're more of things that come out of US, out of Silicon Valley type things. If you go to the next slide, I think you will see certain themes. There are things which are happening in Sweden, and more of them are around life sciences, NLP, computer vision, especially with regards to autonomous cars, I think, but also some interesting industrial applications, robotics also. And you might have noticed that there are a lot of robotics research happening in various labs in Sweden, as as Sahar may have mentioned earlier, as well as there's a small number of startups looking more at how to at data tools and MLOps. I think there's more recognition, that this is not happening, quickly enough. Next, and let's skip the next one, I would say. So other than, let's go to the next one. Other than investments by, the angels and the venture companies and stuff like this, I think it's fair enough to say that Sweden, in general, recognizes the importance of AI integration. And some of the key players here are Vinnova, which is Sweden's innovation agency. And they're the ones partly funding AI Sweden that we are about to talk about. And Vinnova also has projects for integration AI into your company, so you can see which funding projects they have. The other one is DIG, and DIG is Agency for Digital Government. It's a brand new agency. I'm actually on the advisory board for it. And it will be responsible for digitalization of the public sector in Sweden, including digital identity and various things related to giving legal advice around the issues of data and building up kind of like open data, but also integration of AI. Sahar?
Yeah, so I wanted to add also Vinnova is also supporting universities as well. So a lot of fundings around, like for instance, European funding around Horizon 2020 comes through also Vinnova. We talked about the WASP Foundation being one of the largest drivers of research funding and also collaborations with industry. There's also KKS Foundation, which is one of the largest players here, and is basically funding research and developments, and also things that are applied between industry and research to also allow for further development of research. We also have SSF, being the Swedish Foundation for Strategic Research, and that is for investment in cutting edge research within AI. So these institutes support a lot of different types of areas, but and we highlighted, and there are many more of them, but we highlighted this because they have a special interest and support and prioritization for AI. With that, I give it to Galina to talk about AI Sweden.
So one thing with AI ecosystem in Sweden is that there are many connections being made between many organizations. And I think one of the big initiatives that is meant to sit between many things is AI Sweden, whose goal, it's an organization whose goal is to accelerate applied AI in Sweden, both in public and in private sector. So it's about accelerating AI adoption. And they actually work both on AI adoption and also kind of like boosting certain parts of very specific parts of AI research. So their goal is, and I think we have another slide on that, right? The next one. Yeah. Yeah, you can see they have many partners, and so really the idea is to, make sure that kind of cross-functional benefits can be reaped out of it. So they will be focused on making sure that there are data factories, that there is joint investment and kind of in strategic resources and knowledge and the right ones. There is a project consortium and funding, and there are a lot of discussion on what Sweden and the Swedish ecosystem needs to accelerate AI transformations, and what major impact initiatives should be run, and in some cases should be funded and stuff like this. And they're basically a big network hub. So there's a national community, but there are also local nodes, and they're also engaged in a variety of international benchmarking and some talent questions. So we have this hope to kick off some projects together also this year. And so AI Sweden is a big one, but then there are many small ones.
Yeah, so there are also a few interest groups. There are many of them, and we highlighted a few that we are more aware of and we found them interesting. So there are some of them, they are non-profit, and some of them they are organizations, profitable organizations. So there are a few of them focusing on developments, for instance, PyLadies and pink programming, not necessarily only based in Stockholm, but for instance in Skåne and in Stockholm, or Gaia being an organizer of conferences as well, based in Gothenburg, and we have Hyperwrite organizing conferences, and Stockholm AI with a big community of knowledge sharing forum, and also the old Institute of Swedish AI Society. And of course, we are in this map, we are here. We are also an interest group, and we are hoping to help and boost this community to grow and contribute to this ecosystem by that. Thinking about the interesting trends, I think there are a few that we would like to briefly just throw their names so that you're familiar with. One is that the EU and trustworthy of AI. Related to that, there's also and being being in EU, this is more relevant for us compared to a lot of other countries and continents, and it affects a lot of regulations. It's responsible AI and its relation to human and society, explainability, causal ML and ML ops becoming big things, and interest of putting ML in production, looking at pre-built models and auto ML. And also there are some trends around language and conversation understandings in Sweden. What does that mean? That means that there's also tons of technologies. We live in a funny situation that if you think about 2012 and 2016 and look at the maps of AI data landscapes and tools, you see that's just huge things to catch up with, and that's why we highlighted that there is a need for continuous investments in educations and fundings. So this is from Workera. This is about career passes. I think there are a lot of things that are changing, the involvements and the names are changing of roles. They're where we involve in which phases of data and modeling we are involved is also changing. And I wanted to highlight that there are tons of roles and trends. Some of them, they are old names, some of them, they are new names. And there are a lot of challenges and questions to look at around having these new roles. They don't fit really to the conventional career path, and it's a discussion to pick up on how we support development of ML practitioners and technologists in this domain. Galina, with that, I give it to you to go through the last two slides.
So It's very interesting to look who develops the technology, and I can highly recommend people reading AI Now report that I think I posted as also in the chat, which talks about the importance of having a diverse workforce that develops AI technologies, because there's a lot of talk right now around the fact that maybe we could use AI for making the world more equitable, and there is a lot of talk around like making AI less biased, but it's very clear that one of the best ways to do it is to make sure that the technology is developed by a more diverse group of people. So the situation in our field is not great. So 18% of authors at leading AI conferences are women. 20% of AI professors are women. If you look at big companies like Facebook and Google, 15% of AI research staff at Facebook and 10% in Google are women, which are stunningly low numbers, to be honest. And there's no data on trans and other gender minorities. And I would say this is where we all need to work a lot more. I think we should make sure that the technologies of the future developed by the people to whom those technologies will go. So we don't have situations like a chatbot that for the same set of symptoms tells women that they're having anxiety and tells men that they're having a heart attack. So, we can build more technology on top of this technology to make it less biased, but to be honest, these are great jobs. They're well paying, they're interesting, the data is interesting. And, we need to go at it together. And I think we're out of time.